All right.
Hello, and welcome to one of our first ever Storycast episodes. This is a new series where we're taking our friends, authors, individuals that we work with or getting to know, and sharing a love of stories, of story and song, learning, community, and we're just going to touch on a lot of great subjects. And I'm really, really excited today to be joined by Dr. Dan Pesut. Some of you may know him as partner to Susan Zeal, one of our beloved fabric artists that we featured here many times through her brand Wabi Creations. And Dan is accomplished is not the operative word. Dan has a laundry list of achievements in healthcare. He's a retired active duty serviceman. He has accomplished many things in the fields of leadership, of Donna mentioned the word renewal. I really resonated with that. And so, Dan, I don't even think I'm really doing you justice, frankly, but I've pretty much said my piece. So I'd like to just jump right in with our topic today with Dr. Dan Pesut, which is strengths-based leadership. We've got two books we're going to talk about. And Dan, do you want to take it away?
Thanks, Connor. I appreciate the invitation and opportunity to share some things with your listeners and the story and song community. So I've been an academic nurse educator for over 46 years and recently retired. And we are going to be spending winters here in Amelia Island. So connecting with story and song and sharing some of my experience and wisdom with your community of practice and learning is a great opportunity. And as we were discussing the beginning of this podcast or Storycast, one of the things that's sort of been a red thread in my life is helping students learn what their strengths are, what their values are, and what their contributions are, and crafting those things into a mission statement that becomes a guiding light or a North Star for them. So over the last 12 years or so, I have had this academic exercise, but it doesn't necessarily need to be an academic exercise. For people that journal or people that contemplate, they might find these two resources, Strengths-Based Leadership by Tom Rath and Barry Conchie, and Life's Great Question by Tom Rath, pretty inviting. One of the things I've learned about leadership development is that you have to do a lot of inner work before you can do outer service. And I think these two books help one understand and grasp what people bring to the enterprise. And so, for example, in my teaching career at the University of Minnesota, I would teach leadership to undergraduate baccalaureate students, master's students, doctorate of nursing practice students, and Ph.D. students. And one of the most favorite things that I enjoyed doing was reading papers that they wrote called their strengths-based leadership assignment. And that involves really taking the Gallup Strengths Finders, which was developed by the Gallup Corporation and Tom Rath, and figuring out what your top 5 signature strengths are. And actually, the Strengths-Based Leadership book has an assessment in it that people can go and get a code and go to the Gallup website and take this assessment, and it will do a printout of what their top 5 leadership strengths are, but it is possible to get all 34 strengths. The Gallup Corporation has identified 34 strengths that relate to leadership in the areas of getting things done, executing, influencing, relationship building, and strategic thinking. And so students take that assessment and they think about what their contribution is and how they might be able to maximize that. The other great thing I like about the Strengths-Based Leadership book is Gallup has done research from thousands and thousands of people all around the world. And what they identify are 4 things that followers want from a leader. And the 4 things that followers want from a leader are trust, compassion, stability, and hope. And what I really admire and appreciate about the Strengths-Based Leadership book is it tells you if you've got this strength, this is how you can elicit trust from people. This is how you can elicit compassion. This is how you can elicit hope. This is how to elicit stability. So I have the students create this matrix with their top 5 signature strengths at the top, and trust, compassion, stability, and hope in a left-hand column. And then the book, chapter by chapter, for each strength involved, tells you specific strategies about how to build that strength and incorporate that into your leadership repertoire. So, for example, they also talk about the 4 dimensions of leadership. I think I mentioned executing, influencing, relationship building, and strategic thinking. And I happen to have an achiever strength. I happen to have an activator strength. I happen to have a relator strength, and I happen to have a strategic strength. And so all of knowing those strengths enables me to sort of think about and influence things in a new and different way. And so I do believe that the strengths-based leadership book is a great resource for people that are into being clear about who they are, what they can do, and how they might be able to influence and lead other people.
So Dan, I just want to jump in. That's all. So I really am. I'm so glad that I'm just so glad that you chose this topic while we were talking about doing this interview, because obviously you're very passionate about it and knowledgeable, but I think it's something that's really engaging for people. I think that we're in a time right now where people are starting to look at the ideas of leadership and the way it impacts them and what they want to see in a leader, whether it's on the national political level or a community level more immediately. It's something that I think about a lot. I think that my life has been shaped by the leaders in my life. More recently, obviously, you have Donna Paz Kaufman, the owner of Story and Song, who is an amazing leader and who's empowered all of us to be where we are, to be successful despite some recent, hardships, and other leaders that I've connected with in the community and who've inspired me to think of myself. I don't know if I would say myself as a leader, but the kind of leader I would want to be, if that's a safe enough answer. And I recently joined, we were just talking about this a little bit before we got started here, the Nassau Leadership Program, which I'm really excited about. I was put up for that by Janice Minshew, the president of Huntington Beach Pride, of which I've been an active part for a long time. And it was something but it was a real moment of self-reflection for me, because before then I had never thought of myself as a leader. And I'm thinking about what people who, and again, not to say that I'm thinking of myself as some ideal leader, but people who have never thought of themselves as leaders, but yet who start to see some of these skills or the ideas of these skills in themselves. And what does that mean? I guess I'm circling around to a question finally, which is for you, why is it important for people to start to see themselves as leaders?
Well, one of the things is I think people oftentimes don't have a vocabulary or a word to articulate what is the leadership skill that they bring to a situation. And one of the things I appreciate about the strengths-based leadership, it gives you the vocabulary of leadership. So, for example, in the domain of executing, getting things done, some people might have a strength of an achiever or an arranger or a deliberative approach or a discipline or focus or responsibility or restoration in terms of working with other people. Or in terms of strategic thinking, some people might be more analytical or more futuristic, or they might be good at generating ideas and inviting input and learning and being strategic and seeing through a lot of complex things. And what the strengths-based leadership book does is it gives people actually a word, a vocabulary to describe what they bring to a situation. So, for example, many times I'm working with nursing students getting ready for seniors to graduate. Many of them would come back to me later and they'd say, I just had my first job interview. And they asked me what my strengths were, what I would bring to this situation. And because I had written this paper, I knew exactly what to say. And it was very explicit and it made it all really easy. And so over and over again, I've gotten the feedback that the strengths-based leadership paper and exercise and the leadership courses I've taken has been one of the most significant learning experiences for people, because it does foster some inner work and reflection, but it also makes explicit what people bring to a situation, and it gives people vocabulary to describe what they do best and how they might be able to relate to other people.
And Dan, with your permission, I would love to give people the opportunity, maybe after we go live with this talk, to review that assignment, if you'd be comfortable, because I can imagine people would, of all ages and all, walks of life and placements in their personal and professional lives, would be interested to see a little bit more about themselves, and I think opportunities for self-reflection are always important.
Absolutely. And one of the things is today we're talking about strengths, but I also connect that assignment to a values assessment. And there's 3 values assessments: the Barrett Values Scale, the Taylor Protocol, and the VIA, Values in Action Institute, has an assessment. So not only do I talk about strengths, but I also have students identify their values and then try to negotiate how their values interrelate and are complementary to their strengths. I thought it was a little much to do values today with this initial.
Maybe next time.
Maybe next time we can talk about values, because there's some great books there too. But I think one of the most important things is last year I discovered the work of Tom Rath. He actually has written a new book, was published in April of 2020, and it's called Life's Great Question: Discover How You Contribute to the World. And so it occurred to him, after working on the strengths and the Gallup work for so long, that perhaps maybe strengths wasn't as important as what a contribution was. And so he developed another assessment that walks people through a series of questions and helps them get what he calls the Contribify profile. And so he helps people identify what their top 3 contributions are in terms of work. And he really, again, talks about creating. And under creating, there's the contributions of initiating, challenging, teaching, and visioning. Relating, and under relating, there's the contributions of connecting, energizing, perceiving, and influencing. And operating. And under operating, there are the contributions of organizing, achieving, adapting, and scaling. So I brought my Contribify profile with me to this, and no big surprise, but my greatest contribution is in the area of teaching and initiating. I can kind of initiate and get things done and invite people to activate some things. And then also I have a contribution about adapting. So when rubber meets the road and we're operating, when people run into conflicts, I can see through, using my strategic strength, a lot of the complexity and suggest an adaptation in order to move people forward. And so the Tom Rath Life's Great Questions also has that assessment and this great profile, because it then helps you identify and take one of those contributions, and then he talks about how you can contribute to the organization, how you can contribute to the team, but perhaps more importantly, how you can stay energized in relationship to that contribution with your own work. So great author, Tom Rath, great resources. I think it helps people really sort of do a lot of the inner scanning and assessment that informs who they are and what they have to contribute and how they think about their operating in the world. And I think, people will have the link at the end of this Storycast,
yes,
if they're interested in learning more and wanting to do a deeper dive.
Yeah. And, as we were talking about so yes, those books will have links available through Story and Song's website to look into ordering those books for your own. But we also, we were mentioning maybe making this exercise available. And of course, there are the links to the surveys and different things too. So who knows, this might spiral off and create an entire leadership focused project.
Oh, there you go.
There it is.
I'd be happy to support
You never
that.
know what's gonna happen at Story and Song. I don't even try to predict it.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to overwhelm people with information. So, I mean, the values is pretty intense. For example, the VIA Character Institute out of Ohio is that's a long assessment. It's like 240 questions. But what they do in that one is they give you a rank order of your top 24 character values and virtues. And so there's a lot of information in there that gives people some really hardcore information about themselves and offers them a lot to contemplate in terms of who they are and what they are about, what their mission is, what their vision is for the world, and who they are in terms of as they work with other people. One thing I will say, if people do pursue the books and go out, I would take the assessment first. There's a little
That's good to know.
There's a little code in the back of the book and a little envelope. I would take the assessment first and then be surprised about what your results are, and then do a deep dive in the book to sort of figure out more about what the details are in relationship to those individual strengths and contributions.
You know, I'm torn because a part of me wishes I had taken the full survey, but quite frankly, I would not have had time this week for a 240 questionnaire. But it's the seed's been planted, and actually, funny enough, pertaining to the NASA leadership thing, I did recently take a leadership-based survey just on yesterday morning. So some of those topics are fresh in my head, but you know, there's so many different ways and gauges and questions and things. So many different ways.
There's so many leadership assessments.
You would know more than me.
There. Yes, so many. But these I have found to be quite evidence-based, very useful, and pragmatic.
So, Dan, I want to just take a brief step back and talk a little bit more about you, because as we were preparing for this conversation, and as I've been listening to you today, I was thinking about your background, and I'm going to oversimplify here, but if we broke that down into your history as a nurse in the medical field, also as a retired active duty serviceman and an academic, although those are all overlapping, I understand breaking it down. So how do you feel of those three generalizations? How do you feel that those work together to contribute to your strengths? And that's probably an extremely broad question, but you know, that's just what I'm thinking of right now, because for me, those backgrounds are just diverse enough to bring a nice range of abilities, but also perspectives, strengths, experiences. How do they work together to incorporate? And again, those are generalizations, three, you know, easy cutaways from what I know about you. And obviously for you, there's a lot more intricacy and nuance to that. But just if I could frame that question that way, how do those three pillars, I guess, in your life?
Well, it's Connor, you're sort of channeling Tom Rath, because in the Contribufy assessment, before you do the assessment, answer the questions, he talks about what might be your defining roles, what were milestones in your career, and what do you personally perceive as your strengths. And so my defining roles, as I think about my contributions, are as a parent, as a teacher, and a coach. But the most influential life experiences I've had, I actually started out in the seminary to study for the priesthood. And then I went into the military. I'm a product of the Army Student Nurse Program. So that early seminary life was instrumental. My military life was instrumental. And then when I decided I wanted to get a Ph.D., that whole shaping of being a PhD-oriented scholar and trying to generate knowledge and science were really pretty milestone events in my life, which I think contributed and also sort of provided I don't know what the weaving mechanism is, the warp and the whoop and the tapestry of my life is bringing all those.
I feel like that's a good tag
together
into Wabi Creations, yes. The fabric-based metaphors.
Wabi Creations, exactly.
And you know what, Dan, and I apologize. I was thinking back over your bio, and I completely glossed over your seminary work. So obviously that's a perfect segue in. And so you mentioned that was the first one. And if it's not too personal, what was your inspiration for going into the seminary before, at first?
Well, I don't know how personal you want to get here, but it goes back to the 8th grade. I went to a very Catholic school, and one day I was called to the principal's office. And there was Sister Mary Trinita and Father Kane, the pastor and I thought, what have I done to be called into the principal's office? And Sister Mary Trinita said, Father Kane and I have decided that you are one of the most responsible boys in the 8th grade, and therefore you need to become a priest. And
I'm so glad I asked, honestly.
You need to go to the seminary. And what do you do at 14? Especially if you're a responsible boy. So I ended up going to the seminary for 4 years of high school and 2 years of college. And then after that, realized I needed to create my own future and not somebody else's prescription of my future. And so...
Well, that was obviously a perfect answer. And at first, when you said that, I was like, oh, well, maybe that's too much. But, I will say that I'm taking advantage of this situation a little because as a lifelong Southerner, I have known very few Catholics and even fewer priests. So I haven't sat across from someone who went into the seminary ever. So I'm kind of taking advantage of this for my own background knowledge. And it's interesting because I really, and I won't talk for a long time about myself, but I really resonate with so many of the key points. I used to teach. I also have a background in religious studies. And so a lot of the things that as we've been talking and as I was looking over, some of the information you shared before we got started, I just resonate with so many of these things. And it makes me wonder, because I resonate with it, but obviously we also have key differences, of course. And I'm more and more interested in seeing how those flesh out and what some of my strengths based on this would be. So more and more I'm thinking, again, I'm torn between wishing I had taken the time and knowing I did not have time to do the thing. So, and I'm also glad that I'm speaking broadly and not getting bogged down in those specific things if I'd done it myself.
Well, I do think that it does provide you an opportunity to do some reflection and pivot, and especially at midlife, people have lived a long time, but then people periodically have to figure out what is the good life for them. And another book I'd love to talk about sometime into the future is by Richard Leiter and David Shapiro, and it's called Packing and Repacking Your Bags, Lighten the Load for the Rest of Your Life. And these guys are executive coaches, and they said that everybody really wants the good life, and they define the good life as being in the place you belong, with the people you love, doing the right work on purpose. And they have a whole series of exercises to help people figure that out and sort of manage that. So, but that's for the future.
Still, that's a nice plug, nice taste of what, keep the people wanting more. So Dan, we're getting close to the end here. And so I just wanted to, well, firstly, and I'll do it more than once, I want to thank you for joining me. Thank you for being, and I don't mean this to be unflattering, but a bit of a guinea pig with this. This is a new series, but that we're really excited about, a new way of getting stories to people, which is what Story and Song is really about. We love books, obviously, but books for us are a way of reaching out to people, of exchanging ideas, of talking about it. We read books as much for the author as for the content, and our emphasis on getting to know people, having conversations, learning from them is so key to not only our business model, but our values here, and so I just want to thank you for doing this and being a part of this. I want to tell everyone listening that we're going to be doing a lot more Storycasts. We're going to have a few different we have lots of different voices there, lots of different styles, interviews, lectures. Ron Kurtz will find his way in there and get it. Those will be less survey, more stage, but it's going to be fun. And Dan, is there anything else that you want to say before we sign off?
Thank you for the opportunity, Connor. This has been a great opportunity to share, and it adds to my contribution about teaching, initiating, and adapting. So thanks again.
I love that. And I feel like I am learning from this and also from you. So I'd say you've more than made it worth our while.
Mission accomplished.
Yep. Well, like I said, we're going to sign off here. Look out for more Storycasts on Facebook, on YouTube, and on our other platforms. Dr. Dan Pesut, thank you as always. Now you and Susan have been on all of our platforms, so we're just Wabi family. I don't know, a good Zeal Shoot Pesut family.
Yes.
Anyway, thank you so much, Dan. I appreciate it, and we look forward to hearing more from you, learning more from you, and seeing you guys around Amelia Island.